It's shaped rather like an elephant's foot. It takes up an entire basement area in the reactor building. They've now encased the reactor in a sarcophagus using lead sheeting, steel, and cement. Now, that sarcophagus is already 25 years old or older, and it's having to be, there's extra layers which are being added to the Chernobyl sarcophagus as each year goes by. And the reason for that is because radioactive waves will penetrate eventually even 6-foot thick concrete. And the concrete is being gradually weakened. The molecular structure of the cement is being broken down by these neutrons which are being flung off from this giant melted core. The core is still glowing red, and it's still there. It's so radioactive that you can actually go and look at it, but your exposure must not be longer than 90 seconds. In that 90 seconds, you will receive the equivalent of 250 X-rays. And the sarcophagus is being made bigger and bigger and bigger. It has to be now. It's costing huge amounts of money, and it's going to have to be maintained for the next 30,000 years. That's how long the core will be active for. The sarcophagus needs to be made thicker by about 6 feet every 5 to 6 years. And at the end of this period, the Chernobyl sarcophagus will be the size of Luxembourg, the size of a small country.
Wow. Oh, my God. What have we done to our mother? I mean, it's
I have to say, it's nothing to do with us. It's nothing to do with the general public. This is what the elite, like Max was saying, these psychopathic, royal political elitists have done.
See, that's the thing. They like to blame us. They like to look at all of this stuff and they say it's because of consumerism. But it's not. We consume what our governments provide for us to consume. We elect these people to positions of trust, and we assume that they are trustworthy. And they say, look, okay, guys, do this. And we do it, and they say, it's your fault. You're responsible for the mess that we've created. We need to look at it that way. We really do. It's not us that's to blame. Chris is absolutely correct with that. It's these elitists that continue to run the planet. And we simply need to make people aware of how this system works and how it is simply a meme. It's simply an idea that this is how the system works. They instill into people the idea that this is how reality is. And we all go, oh, okay, no worries, and we go along with it. But we need to see the damage that is being done by our compliance to this system. So we need to, I mean, it's not our fault, but now that people are beginning to wake up to what's happening, we certainly need to take a little bit of responsibility for this situation and deal with it as a collective species the way we should, I believe.
Well,
absolutely.
This is out of the Times of India. I just wanted to interrupt for just a second. The Times of India came out with an article just now saying radiation plume likely to reach California today. So there's obviously a huge gap between the international media and the media in the United States. And I guess that's because the media in the United States is owned by the same people who own GE and Westinghouse. Isn't that right?
Well, absolutely. Yes. It is. And this is also, like I was saying about the jet stream, this is why it's reaching the United States first, because that is the way the jet stream travels. And there really should be no doubt of the seriousness of this situation. Like, when you have these meltdowns occur, when you have these accidents occur, any accident of a cooling system in a nuclear reactor, it takes around 90 minutes before the fuel rods will start to buckle. And a meltdown starts in about 2 hours. These things, they cannot be exposed to air. They need to be cooled all the time, constantly cooled. And if you leave these uncooled, then you get meltdown. It's simply unavoidable. That's the way it happens. And so you've got like a 90-minute or 2-hour window. And you look at the devastation in Japan. I mean, the destruction is absolute. The damage that's been done to that country through the tsunami, and you just got to look at the photographs. It's absolutely horrendous. So it's not unreasonable to assume that cooling pipes have been broken. All these things have happened. These whole compounding set of errors has happened. The tsunami that was higher than they said it would ever be has created the situation they said could never happen. It's always what they say could never happen. And even the backup cooling systems on all these plants are located in the basement on these plants. So what's the first place that's going to flood in the tsunami is the basement. I mean, the whole design of these plants, it's an accident waiting to happen. And there should be no doubt, just the fact that they're pumping seawater in. I mean, the zirconium, these rods produce hydrogen anyway as soon as they're exposed to the air, but the reaction also with the seawater and the zirconium produces more hydrogen, so we get more explosions. It's the first time raw seawater has ever been used, dumped directly onto reactors to try to cool them down, and this shows how desperate the situation actually is. I mean, they're trying to drop this stuff from buckets in helicopters. This is unprecedented. Yes. So then there needs to be no doubt in people's minds of the seriousness of this situation and how much the media is simply not telling you.
Can I just get in there, Max, about this situation with the seawater? You're absolutely correct. It's an act of utter desperation.
Oh, it is. It is. Absolutely it is. And that should be a clear sign to people that this situation is serious. And I'm not trying to be a fearmonger, but we've got to realise that this is happening. So start taking steps to look after yourself, people.
Yeah. Now, just on this thing about the seawater, this is not being properly covered by the BBC or any of the European news feeds which I've been monitoring.
No, it's not. It's not.
Yeah, roughly about 1 million or between 1 and 2 million gallons of seawater have been pumped out of the sea and sprayed onto the reactors. Then the water has run off. It's run off into the ground and it's run off back into the sea. These reactors are right on the shore. And most of the hundreds of nuclear reactor sites which we see around the planet are actually on beaches. And the reason for that is because they suck water into these plants and circulate it, as Max said, to keep the rods cool. But they purify the water, and usually, the actual seawater isn't used as raw seawater and sprayed directly onto the rods. That is not how it should happen.
No, not at all. So that's the problem. That shows how desperate this situation actually is, because this has never ever occurred before. And spraying seawater onto the plants effectively destroys the plant.
Oh, absolutely. This is completely finished. Fukushima is finished. We've got between 1 and 2 million gallons of seawater, which is run now back into the soil and back into the Pacific Ocean.
And it's got all that radiation in it.
Oh, this is seawater which has been in contact with plutonium. And we are going to see a massive amount of problems with the organisms in the northern Pacific.
Well, we just had all the anchovies. We had all the anchovies in California wash up dead. Do you think this thing was leaking prior to this?
Well, I've actually written an article last summer about whales beaching themselves near nuclear reactors. It's an article which I've sent out thousands of copies of that article today for free, and there's photographs, and I've plotted maps of where these whales beach themselves. It's a very, very strange phenomena, and the media don't really even investigate it. The ecological agencies don't seem to investigate it. There is definitely, I believe, a link, a statistical fingerprint of these weird occurrences where whales are beaching themselves and seemingly committing suicide. And they seem to be doing it near these nuclear facilities. And we have to prepare ourselves for, well, we should take some basic precautions. First of all, fish, you should not eat now any fish from the Pacific. for at least the next year and a half to 2 years. And that is just a simple precaution.
Well, what is this going to do to the water supply?
Well, the water supply, the groundwater in Fukushima has been now contaminated. We have homeless people in snow. It's -2 degrees. Japan is a northern hemisphere country. It was barely springtime. It's now snowing. Dead bodies that were easy to recover, these are dead bodies that were not in houses or cars, they are being collected. But the rubble, the vehicles, I got video sat feeds via Paris this afternoon showing that there are cars just lying everywhere with the drivers dead in them. And we are dealing, as Max said, with utter devastation. It's not only a quake disaster followed by a tsunami, it's a radiological disaster on top. And I'm sorry, the leaders of Japan, I've been going to Japan for more than 20 years. I love Japan. I love Japanese people. The leaders are not the same as the everyday Japanese people. The emperor is considered by the Japanese people to be a god in human form. That's Emperor Akihito. Now, the elite, and I've been watching these Japanese ministers, they have been lying over and over and over again concerning Fukushima, and it's been one lie after another, after another, after another. And this is typical of the nuclear industry, and it's typical of the political elite. They are pathological liars. Instead of being honest and saying, this has poisoned the groundwater in the whole of northeastern Japan, and it's poisoned the Pacific Ocean, and we haven't built these plants with, for example, piles of sand and piles of boron crystals at hand, and we haven't provided enough hot food, and we haven't provided enough medical equipment if we need to evacuate. Instead of being honest, they've just fed the media lies.
Let me jump.
And on I was just going to say, on my Facebook page, I've actually got the latest satellite photographs of the Fukushima plant. And Google satellite, the Google Earth service, when this first happened, for some reason, it was impossible to actually get those satellite images. But through the sat feeds, I've managed to get hold of those images, and they're actually right now on my Facebook page.
Let me jump back a couple of levels in this, and let's go back to the cause of the earthquake itself. Max, in your opinion, what is causing this earthquake? What caused this earthquake to begin with? Because I've seen HAARP data from Alaska showing that it was very active 48 hours prior to the earthquake, leading up until the earthquake, then after that it went completely dead. However, most of the researchers who are much more researched than I am have come to the conclusion that there was no HAARP activity whatsoever. And not only that, but I also find it suspicious that we seem to have cameras there as this was happening. I mean, this was all filmed and broadcasted throughout the world as it was happening. What is your take on that?
Well, look, it's really up for debate. I mean, there's people that are putting out data saying this appears to be HAARP. I was speaking to Lorraine Murray the other day. She believes that it's HAARP. I had a friend who was in Japan 4 days before the event. He's rather intuitive, and he was looking out over the bay, and he saw red glow in the sky 4 days before the event, and he just got a premonition that something bad was about to happen, and he left 4 days prior. And that's interesting as well, but I mean, I don't know whether that would be anything or not.